Alright, let's try this again. Hopefully it works this time. Oh, there we go.
Hooray!
Yay! Sorry, we had a little technical hiccup. Apparently,
No, he fell asleep. He really
I did fall asleep. Yeah, no, I'm getting over a cold. Leave me alone.
It was the Star Wars celebration last night.
Yes. So no, what happened was I think I loaded too many images into the program here, and it confused and crashed the program. So technology, it'll be the ruin of us all.
Yeah.
So welcome to another episode of Torn Book Club. This is what is today, the 19th of April, and we are discussing again. Where is that? The Silmarillion. Look at that!
Woohoo!
Yay!
We're back with the Silmarillion. It's bigger and better than ever.
It is. We're getting into some good meaty stuff now.
Yes.
We're going to be discussing 3 chapters. Now they're relatively short chapters, but they do have a continuing storyline, which is something that doesn't happen all that often in the Silmarillion. It tends to jump around a lot. But so we're going to be doing, what chapters are these? Of Feanor and the Unchaining of Melkor, of the Silmarils and the Unrest of the Noldor, and of the Darkening of Valinor.
Valinor will darken? That's a spoiler!
I know, right? It's like, God, why doesn't he just say, and of the death of this main character?
I had several subtitles for that chapter myself, but Josh says I can't use them because they involve a lot of profanity.
Yeah, we try to keep it PG here. Like, there's somebody who's a bit of a jerk. So what we've been talking about previously, or 2 weeks ago, was all the different lineages of the elves, and the one that we needed to pay closest attention to because they're going to play a major part in what we're about to go through is the House of Finwë. All these people. And so I mentioned before which ones we need to pay close attention to, and those are the 3 big ones, Feanor and Fingolfin. Finarfin, he comes into play later, as do most of the other characters here, but for the most part, the 3 main characters who are mentioned in this huge graphic that we need to pay attention to this week are Finwë, Feanor, and Fingolfin. So, got some images of them up here. There's our Feanor. And so this chapter begins with the birth of Feanor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to go back a little bit.
Okay, go back a little bit further.
Just a tiny bit. Here's Finwë.
Mm-hmm.
That's the daddy of the Noldor. And here's, I didn't even label because he's so unimportant, Ingwe. And they were both living in the same spot in Valinor.
In Tyrion, yeah.
In Tyrion, strange that George R. R. Martin used Tyrion. It's spelled different.
Yes, it is.
In Tyrion upon tuna.
Yes.
Because he liked tuna sandwiches, I guess.
I don't know. It still conjures up this hilarious image for me of Tyrion from Game of Thrones sitting on a barrel full of fish.
Yes. Tyrion upon tuna. But Ingwe, who was Vanyar, the Vanyar elves, decided that Manwë was a sycophant of Iluvatar, and he needed a sycophant himself. So Ingwe comes over to live at the bottom of Mount Olympus, where the rest of the Valar, where Manwë and Varda are hanging out. So he takes all his elves and lives over there. So he lives just below Manwë and Varda.
Yeah, he lives at the base of the big mountain Taniquetil.
Thank you for pronouncing it for me.
Uh-huh.
And then we still have Finwë living over there, and Olwë with the Teleri are over by the shores.
Yes, they're on the shores
building
in their town called Aqualunde.
Aqualung?
Yes.
Yes. I call it Aqualung.
Yeah. Good God, now I'm never going to get that song out of my head. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just
Jethro Tull. Thank you so much.
And so Olwë hangs out with Finwë's group a lot because they like to build stuff.
Yeah, he likes to teach them all their different crafts. So basically Finwë and the Noldor are primarily in the city of Tyrion at this point. The Teleri are in Alqualunde building their ships, and the Vanyar are at Tiny Quetzal, basically just hanging out and staring up lovingly at Manwë.
Being sycophants like they are. Okay,
so
the
so
birth.
yeah, so we have Finwë. Where is Finwë? Here he is. There's Finwë. He is married currently to his first wife named Miriel.
She's not gonna last long, so I didn't put a name tag on her.
Yeah, and they have one child, and that's Feanor.
Feanor, he's the TiVo.
Now, here's the thing about Feanor. He is what you would call
An alpha male.
Very much so. Yes. His birth name is actually Kuru Finwë,
which is very similar to Saruman's original name.
Right. Which is Kuru Mo, I think.
Yeah. It's in the base of it just means crafty and wise.
Right, and then Feanor also has a son named Kurufin. So.
Right.
But anyway, his birth name is Kuru Finwë, but his mother Miriel calls him Feanor, which means spirit of fire. So already we know that this kid has quite a destiny ahead of him.
Now here's the thing, in real life there are people like this, not quite on this epic scale.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people in the world, the movers and shakers of the world, that I think would make very poor friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things that happen like in Silicon Valley between Steve Jobs and Bill Gates.
Yeah.
When they were going at it, they're both kind of alpha males. They both wanted to kind of take over.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would want to be friends with either of them.
Well, yeah, and Feanor is probably about as alpha as you can get.
Yeah, so he has a drive. It's not his fault. He was just born with this drive to do more, to create more, to be more, and to be a leader.
Yeah, and we should point out that he was born this way because Miriel put a whole lot of her own energy into Feanor.
She didn't. I don't know that she did it on purpose. It just he kind of took it.
Either he took it or she did it. It's not really made clear because it seems to me almost like she did it deliberately.
Go ahead.
Okay, but anyway, and I totally lost my train of thought. I'm sick.
The life of many has gone forth into Feanor.
Yeah. Which could mean, it could mean either he took it or she gave it.
Right.
Either way,
he's got it.
He's got a lot of her life energy to the point where she doesn't think she can have kids ever again. And this is upsetting to Finwë because the elves are still new to this world and they still have a lot of breeding to do. And so he's notably dismayed by this, and Miriel says basically, I'm sorry, I just can't. And
I gotta go.
And eventually she goes into the forest of Lorien. There's that.
Sorry.
There it is.
I thought I turned it off. Okay, go on.
Okay. Did you hit snooze again?
I did.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, I'm just gonna shut the whole thing off.
So she goes into the forest of Lorien and basically dies, or dies in the way that an elf would die, where her spirit leaves her body and goes into the halls of Mandos.
But her body remains there unwithered.
Yes, and she basically lies in state in Lorien forever.
Kind of the way, if you've read The Lord of the Rings, kind of the way that Aragorn is described when he lays down to die, that his body never withers.
Yeah. Kind of the same way. And Northrunner is in the chat. Doesn't look like he's going to be here for one, but hello, Northrunner.
Hi.
Welcome. Good to see you here.
Okay.
And I think somebody was asking, is Feanor the TiVo? Yes.
Yes, Feanor is the TiVo.
And and it's Northrunner's mother's birthday. Happy birthday, Northrunner's mom.
And by the way, as an aside, I found out a couple of weeks ago that my mother actually watches these and has commented on my outfits since then. But so Mom's gonna see this as well, so I've got to be good.
Okay. And now she's gonna flip out when she sees it.
Hi, Mom.
Like, oh my God, she knows. So anyway, back to Muriel,
Mm-hmm.
who is now lying in state. I couldn't find. Okay, I did find a good picture of Muriel lying in state, but I'm overloading the broadcasting software with all these images right now, so I really can't show it.
Okay.
Um,
Well, it's very much like Sleeping Beauty, very beautiful
Yeah.
and unwithered by time.
and for a good long while, Finwë basically just sort of goes into Lorien and sits by her body,
Mm-hmm.
basically like calling out to her, hoping that he can in some way bring her back.
Well, he thought that she was gonna just go there temporarily and just get revived in Lorien and then come back.
Yeah.
And didn't quite turn out that way. She really didn't have the energy to continue.
No, she really just sort of gave way.
Yeah.
And so.
But before she went, she gives this line, and I love this line.
Okay, all right.
And we both love this line. We were talking about it before.
Mm-hmm.
Before she leaves, she says, "I would weep if I were not so weary, but hold me blameless in this, and in all that may come after."
Basically,
he's your son now.
Basically, what she's saying, I know that he is going to grow up to be a jerk, and guess what? This is entirely on you now. And Temple is saying this picture looks like it's off of a romance novel. It does kind of.
It does.
Like, it's not my favorite picture of Finwë, but there are very few pictures of Finwë out there on the internet I've found.
Hmm.
So anyway, eventually Finwë decides to move on and goes back to Tyrion, goes back to raising Feanor, and basically gives all of his love to Feanor. And so
Feanor appreciates that.
In his way.
Yeah. He loves his father.
And until eventually Finwë marries again. And he marries
a new wife.
He marries a new wife. Her name is Indis.
And she came from this group of elves.
The Vanyar.
The Vanyar. So she's related to this guy, Ingwe.
Yes. And they have two children, Fingolfin and Finarfin. And there's Fingolfin. Finarfin doesn't really play too much of a big role in this story, or this part of the story. He plays a bigger part later on for a bit, and then leaves.
But he is Galadriel's daddy.
Yes. And that's kind of like what Finarfin is best known for, is being the father of Galadriel.
Now, they did describe the two of them in here, and I thought it was kind of ironic the way the two of them were described. It was kind of like the difference between Boromir and Faramir.
Okay.
But I'll find it at some point, but I don't want to stop talking just because I'm looking for that.
Yeah. So, Northerner is saying that picture of Finwë from earlier looks like Fabio.
Yeah, it does! It does look like Fabio.
Temple says, Finwë, Feanor, Fabio.
It's all the same.
They're all the same. So I Stole the One Ring is already lost.
Okay, you got Finwë. He's in charge of the Noldor.
Yeah.
And he married, and he had a son named Feanor. Okay, the TiVo. Okay, yes. And then his wife said, "Oh, it's too much," and she went away. Mm-hmm. And then Finwë was feeling sorry for himself. Said, "Oh, I loved her a lot, but now she's gone, and I'm all alone, and I'm bored." And so he married a relative of this guy over here, the Ingwe's.
He basically remarries.
He remarries.
Indis the Fair.
Yeah, and they have two more kids. So now Feanor is thinking, what are these two kids all about?
Yeah, and like he actually like sort of makes a scene at their wedding.
He did?
Well, basically he made it known.
That's right.
He made it known very clearly that he did not approve.
Yeah.
Of Finwë remarrying.
Yeah, he should have just stayed and been sad.
And you see, this is the thing with Feanor is he is the spirit of fire. And
he can't keep his mouth shut.
And he lives it. Like, he lives that title. There's a line in there where he describes, Tolkien describes how Feanor thinks, and he basically says something like, rarely is he persuaded by counsel, never by force.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. And Fonzie is an elf? Oh God, we've lost the plot already. So many F names.
Yes, yes. They do. He does like the same
Yeah.
The alliteration of names, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Oh, here it is. Fingolfin, the older of the two new brothers,
Yeah.
Was. No, I've lost it. Never mind.
Okay. All right. Anyway, well, the main thing between the two brothers, Fingolfin and Finarfin, is Fingolfin is more of the headstrong warrior type, and Finarfin is more of the more musical, more creative, thoughtful, like Faramir. So there's a parallel that will help to sort of, I think will help you, is like Fingolfin is Boromir, Finarfin is Faramir.
Without the hatred of the father.
Yes.
Imagine Boromir and Faramir if their father loved them both equally.
Yeah. And that's the thing about Finwë, is that he does love Fingolfin and Finarfin very much, but he always has a very special affection for Feanor. And this will come into play later. So we got Feanor. He's grown up and he's married. And he's married his wife. His wife's name is Nerdinel. And
she's not a nerd.
No, she's not a nerd, but she is. Her title is Nerdinel the Wise. And she's one of the few people who can actually talk Feanor down from any sort of...
If he's willing to be talked down.
Yeah, but she is one of the few people he will listen to. And she is the daughter of, I can't remember his name, but he was a major craftsman who basically taught Feanor everything.
Mahat? Mahat? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah. I'd have to look it up again.
I'll just look it up in the back.
Okay. Anyway, she's the daughter of his teacher, and that's
Matan. Mahtan.
Matan. Yes.
Matan.
Matan. There you go. So that's his father-in-law, and also his teacher, and so Feanor is extremely skilled. He is very skilled in woodwork, in metalwork, and in the crafting of gems.
Yeah, the Noldor start with Aule, and they start learning crafts.
Right.
And they start discovering gems in the earth, and then they say, you know what?
We can make
better.
We can make our own. And Feanor really dives into this, like probably more than anything else. I mean, he's very good with metalwork, which is what Matan taught him primarily, is metalwork. And
they shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, actually, Tolkien mentions that. Like, bitterly did Matan regret teaching Feanor the works of metal or something like that.
He does things with metal.
Yeah, he does not good things with metal. So, but his main joy is in crafting gems, and he's very good at it. And and eventually he creates the greatest gems there ever were.
And ever shall be.
And ever shall be. And they're called, wait for it, the Silmarils!
Woohoo! We've got a title!
We finally got a title! The Silmarils were 3 gems that Feanor created that were, and I believe Tolkien says something like, not until the end of the world will it be revealed what are in the, what they're made of.
What they were encased by.
Because these are extremely strong gems. He says they're stronger than adamant, and inside each one is a piece of the light of the trees of Valinor.
When they were blending.
Which is like the strongest light there is.
Yeah, because it was light of both trees.
Right. And so he actually captured that light in these 3 gems.
To the point where inside the gems, the light is still alive.
Right. And so nobody knows how he did it, and he's not telling. Like, even the Valar don't know how he did it.
Wow, how'd you do that? I did find the line, finally, determining the difference between Fingolfin and Finarfin.
Okay.
Fingolfin was the strongest, the most steadfast, and the most valiant. Boromir.
Mm-hmm.
Finarfin was the fairest and the most wise of heart. Faramir.
Faramir. Yep.
So there we go. Sorry it
There
took
you
so
go.
long.
Okay. No, that's good. So at this point, Feanor is at the top of his game. He is beloved by everybody.
You are so cool, Faramir.
He is the High Prince of the Noldor. Everybody loves him. He's created these amazing gems, and
he actually becomes kind of jealous with these gems. He
doesn't like showing it to people.
Yeah, a little like the One Ring, where he was just kind of greedy of his own property, where even showing it to someone was giving them a gift, and he didn't always want to give others the gift of showing them the Silmarils.
Okay, now Ava's saying something interesting. Remember a year ago, there was someone here in the chat who said there are 7 Silmarils, and everyone who thinks otherwise is wrong. I think he was trolling. I don't.
Sorry, I have to go back to Tolkien on that and say there's 3.
There's 3. There's clearly just 3. Good memory on you, Ava. I don't even remember that guy. Like, there might have been like somebody who said something weird like that at some point, because there are definitely people who will like come in every now and then and say just ridiculously stupid things about Tolkien.
Balrogs have wings.
Whatever.
As 3 great jewels, they were in form. Okay,
right
there.
Right there.
Right there.
Out of the mouth of Tolkien. 3.
But not until the end, when Feanor shall return, who perished,
spoiler.
shall it be known of what substance they were made. Like the crystal, no violence could mar it or break it within the kingdom of Arda.
Yeah. So basically, they're indestructible. They hold the light of the trees, and they're the greatest thing.
Now, it doesn't say they're indestructible. It says no violence could mar it.
No violence could.
So I get the feeling that Feanor could unmake them.
He could.
Yes, because that's kind of important later on.
Yeah. Northern is saying something ridiculous like Twilight rules, Tolkien sucks. As far as like people trolling the chat. It doesn't happen often. It does happen every now and then.
Something like that was so extreme, it's like, I would more ignore that.
Yeah, it's like I can't even respond to something like that. Like that's a statement that is so utterly incorrect. Now, Temple's saying, gosh, at least Twilight has more girls. You're not wrong, but at the same time, I feel like there's a much stronger female presence in the Silmarillion than there is in Lord of the Rings, or definitely The Hobbit.
Now, the chapter of Feanor is also called "And the Unchaining of Melkor."
Yes, and we have to get to that next. This is where the story actually starts.
Where do I have Melkor? There he is.
I've been like trying to figure out like a good way to plot this out, like it maybe as like a TV series or a Netflix series, and I feel like this would be season 1. The Unchaining of Melkor that we're about to get to is the first scene, or the first major scene. And so what we have is Melkor has been chained up in the halls of Mandos, deep, deep, deep down in the earth for 3 ages. And so now his sentence has come up.
And they said, just like we promised, we thought we'd give you a chance. It's like, what do they call it when you're in jail? You get a
parole hearing.
Yeah, parole hearing to see, your parole hearing's up.
Yeah, and basically this is them deciding. It's never really clear like what they're going to do with him. It's like, do we release him? Do we send him back? Or do we just banish him outright to the void?
Okay, here's the thing that happens in the trial.
Okay.
And I love this line because this is, and I mentioned this a few episodes ago, this is the crucial factor that makes you think good guys are crazy in the movies, because they always underestimate the bad guy.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
They always think the bad guy's going to turn a new leaf. But Tolkien actually explains it.
Well, you see, Tolkien is very good at showing this sort of myopic attitude.
For Manwë was free from evil and could not comprehend it.
Right.
So this is why Melkor gets unchained.
Right. Now, there are a couple other factors in this. First of all, like this is not something that Manwë is getting any sort of insight from Iluvatar on.
Iluvatar has gone off and taken a nap. He's just not
Yeah.
accessible anymore.
So this is entirely up to
bye-bye, Iluvatar.
Since Manwë is king, it's ultimately his decision.
Mm-hmm.
But he's willing to listen to what the other Valar have to say.
And they all not all, but they all a lot of them vote in favor of releasing him because they don't have that evil in them either.
Right, but there are two who are very much dead set against it,
yes.
and that's Tulkas, fighting across the world.
There he is.
And Ulmo, who is more privy to the music of the Ainur because it actually lives within the water.
Right, it's more pure.
So he has more insight than most of the other Valar.
And they say, this is a bad idea.
Yeah, like they don't really trust Melkor.
He's kind of evil.
But Nienna also really vouches for Melkor.
Nienna is the crier. She's the one that feels bad for people.
She's the crier. She's the one who weeps for the world, lives in Lorien, and she's a strong proponent of compassion.
Yes, and she's the one that says, "Oh, come on, he served his due.
Yeah,
it's time for him to come out and join us."
And we should mention that this entire time, Melkor is abasing himself.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically like on his knees in front of Manwë, saying, "I know what I did was wrong. I'm so sorry. I will spend the rest of my days. I will spend the rest of eternity repenting for my actions."
Melkor abased himself at the feet of Manwë.
Mm-hmm. And he says something like, "You can count me as like the least of beings in the world,"
mm-hmm.
or basically saying, "I was wrong. I'm turning over a new leaf. Just give me a chance to prove myself."
And Manwë says, "Okay."
Well,
he takes votes.
Yeah, I mean, like
he takes counsel.
But the decision is ultimately Manwë's, and Manwë does decide, "Okay, we'll release you." And I don't like to say that it's a naive decision.
Because he wasn't made. It's naive if you're not paying attention to your conscience.
Right.
But Manwë doesn't possess the conscience that tells him that there is evil in Melkor.
Well, he doesn't comprehend that kind of evil. He doesn't comprehend that kind of attitude. Also, Melkor is his brother.
Mm.
And there is a certain level of compassion that he wants to feel towards Melkor. He wants to believe in Melkor. And Nienna makes that case for it.
Yeah.
So
Nienna aided his prayer, but Mondos was silent.
Mondos is always silent. Because Mondos is one of those people who is like, I know what's going to happen, but I'm not going to tell you. And because he is the Lord of Prophecy. And so he is always very privy, and he's always very cryptic. Like, there's a point, not in the chapters that we're going to talk about this week, but in the chapter next week, where Feanor says something about, like, I will be the first to die. I'll be the first of my kind to die in Valinor. And Mandos just says, not the first.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, what?
What does he mean by that?
I'm not even kidding. That is word for word what he says.
So Manwë grants him pardon.
Manwë grants him pardon. And
they still don't trust him completely.
They don't trust him completely. They want him. They're willing to let him wander around a little bit.
They don't watch him.
Now, the whole time, it should be mentioned that as soon as Melkor has been brought out of Mandos,
he is silver-tongued.
He is silver-tongued, and also he is furious. He hates what he has seen.
Because everything he sees, everything about the elves is all... He just thinks that this is why they caged me. This is why they beat me to a pulp, because of these stupid elves.
Yes.
And I will get them.
And so he is plotting his revenge from the moment he tastes free air.
But smiling through it all and saying, you want to learn some stuff? I'll teach you some stuff too.
And he focuses on the Noldor.
Because the Noldor want to learn a lot.
And also, the Vanyar, they don't trust him.
Because, Ingwe doesn't trust him because Manwë. Well, they're all kind of watched him and they're sycophants. So,
yeah, and so they're not really... They don't trust him, so he doesn't really give them too much attention, and he doesn't give too much attention to the Teleri.
He didn't think they were worth it.
He doesn't think they're worth it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so he focuses a lot on the Noldor, and what he does is he starts teaching him things. He starts teaching him various skills, and to the point where, like, I think there's a line where Tolkien says later on that Melkor claimed that he taught Feanor all of his skills and how to make the Silmarils, when in truth, he only ever spoke to Feanor once.
Really?
And yeah, but
Oh, okay.
not at this point.
Okay.
That comes much later.
Feanor had learned much art from him in secret, and had been instructed by him in the greatest of his works, but he lied in his lust and his envy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, and Tolkien says...
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't read the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Melkor indeed declared afterwards that Feanor had learned much of his art in secret.
You only left out the most important part of that line.
Right? I was just skipping ahead.
So Melkor's very good at lying. Northerner is saying when Feanor slammed the door in Melkor's face. Yes.
Ooh, yeah, that's cool.
And that's a bit later on, but we are going to get to that. And Ava's also saying, soon enter the scariest fantasy monster I've ever read about in a book. I know exactly who you're talking about, and we will get to her. So Melkor is basically creating. He's getting the Noldor to trust him, while at the same time spreading very insidious lies to them. And now part of this is actually like there is something the Valar have done that can sow the seeds of distrust, and Melkor takes full advantage of that.
And there are things the Valar haven't done.
And that's what I mean.
Oh, okay.
And the main thing is the Valar, up to this point, have not told the elves anything about men.
Uh-oh.
And so Melkor starts telling them that there are other people coming to Middle-earth, and the Valar have actually deceived you, and they have taken you to Valinor to keep you prisoners, so that men can be the true inheritors of Middle-earth.
And you can't have it because you're here. You're busy here. You could be kings over there, but no, men are going to take care of that stuff.
And this is the problem, because what he's telling them is partly true.
Yeah.
Men are coming, but the Valar definitely did not take the elves to Valinor to keep them prisoner.
They took the elves to Valinor because Middle-earth was too messy.
Yeah. But once that seed has been sown, it's pretty much over and done with, because the truth is the Valar didn't tell them about men. And the fact that they had to learn about it from Melkor, that's going to have repercussions.
And Melkor only needs to sow this inside a couple of minds, and those Noldor will spread it.
Right. And eventually this comes to Feanor, and Feanor is really mad about this.
He's a guy who wants to own it all.
He wants control, and to know that there is somebody else out there who is going to have more control than him, and that you in fact are a willing prisoner of the Valar, well, that's just he doesn't like that at all.
Melkor found some ears that would heed him, some tongues that would enlarge what they heard, and his lies passed from friend to friend.
Now this is like one of the things that I would probably add if I were adapting this as like a TV series, is to create some sort of Wormtongue-like character who would be the one who tells a lot of this stuff to Feanor. Since Tolkien says it, Melkor never spoke to Feanor directly about any of this.
Yeah, it just weaved in and out. Hey, did you hear men are coming and they're going to take over Middle-earth, and we're not there to stop them?
Now, there are two other lies that Melkor tells that will also sow the seeds of distrust in a major way, and that is pitting Feanor and Fingolfin against each other.
But didn't he also mention that the Valar really love the Silmarils and they want to own them? Is that the other one?
That's kind of that, but I think like in his heart, like Feanor always kind of suspected that.
Yeah.
And he'll actually put that to the test later, but that's next week's.
Okay.
But yeah, because he guards the Silmarils very jealously. Like he will occasionally like take them out to great feasts, but most of the time he keeps them locked up in a safe.
And he wears them as a crown.
He
or
wears
as
it. He wears them as a crown sometimes.
Mhm.
They become part of a necklace much later on.
Okay.
But I totally forgot my train of thought again.
The lies that Melkor's telling.
Right. So Melkor basically pits Feanor and Fingolfin against each other for who will be next in line after. Who will be the
Melkor.
next? Who will be the next High Prince?
Feanor, Fingolfin. That's
After
the older
Finwë.
of the other two.
So basically, Feanor is being told that Fingolfin is a usurper and will attempt to overtake him or overthrow him.
And Feanor says, "What?"
And Fingolfin is told that Feanor is just out of control.
Mm-hmm. And it's both kind of true.
Yeah. So these two brothers are kind of pitted against each other, and
Feanor also never loved the other two anyway because they were from the different mother.
And so he's very susceptible to, well, of course they would try to overthrow me. These guys are jerks. I've always known it. So that's what makes Melkor's lies so insidious, is because he plays on what these people probably already believe a little bit anyway, and just enhances it. And so you have this strong tension growing between all the Noldor, and primarily between Feanor and Fingolfin, and to the point where Melkor starts insidiously telling everybody, hey, you know what? You might want to start making swords. You never know. It might come in handy.
And he started giving them advice about it. And because Feanor knew a little bit of metalwork from his wife's daddy,
he really kind of goes all out. He creates a secret forge and starts making tons of armor and weapons.
But only ever wore the shields outside.
Right.
With like emblems of different houses and things like that.
That is until
that day.
Until the day Finwë sees all this tension happening and calls all the elf lords together to talk about this.
Hey, everybody, come here. I want to talk.
That's Feanor.
Yeah. Who? Finwë?
Finwë.
Finwë says it. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. I took Finwë out of the mix.
Oh no, Finwë's still a part of this.
Finwë's still a part of this.
Finwë is still very much a part of this.
Finwë wants everyone to be nice to each other. Say, hey, we're going to stop all this arguing.
So he calls them all together to have a sit-down meeting about this. Now, this is where things go a little awry.
Well, the two other brothers, they arrive early and they're already there.
Finarfin and Fingolfin arrive early, mostly because Fingolfin wants to talk to Finwë personally about his fears of Feanor.
Right. And Feanor decides to arrive...
He decides to arrive early.
Feanor is late. Because he wants to make an entrance.
Right. And so he does.
And
he sees Fingolfin.
Oh, wait. He is dressed in all of his armor.
He is dressed in full regalia. He's brought his sword and everything.
Stuff that no one has ever seen before. They didn't know that he had.
And he shows up, and there's Fingolfin talking to Finwë, and immediately he thinks, well, this is just as I suspected.
They're taking over.
Fingolfin is taking over, and so, first of all, Feanor makes a scene and says, and basically says, I know what you're doing, you can't do this. And Fingolfin says, okay, fine, and just calmly walks out, and then Feanor
Stops him.
Feanor does the unthinkable. He draws his sword on him.
In Valinor.
In public. In front of everybody. And basically, like, at this is one of those, like, Feanor has already won this argument, but he's not willing to just, like, let it rest. He's got to kick him, too. And so he draws his sword on Fingolfin and says, remember just how wrong you are.
Get thee gone and take thy due place.
Yeah, exactly.
And
he does this in full view of everybody.
Fingolfin's response is a little like the first X-Men movie when Wolverine goes up against Cyclops and Wolverine doesn't know what Cyclops can do.
Mm-hmm.
And Cyclops does that over-the-shoulder, Professor X. No, I won't. But he holds himself back. He just kind of looks at Feanor and says, "Okay."
Yeah.
Because it's not worth fighting. Because it's only going to create a fight.
It's just going to create a fight, and he already knows that at this point Feanor has screwed up, and he's screwed up bad.
And as long as Fingolfin doesn't do anything in reaction, then it'll all be on Feanor's head.
Right. And so it's at this point that the Valar finally step in and assemble everybody who has been talking crap, which includes Feanor, Fingolfin, everybody who has been riled up, has been creating weapons, brings them all together to the Ring of Doom to find out what the hell is going on here. and that's when they all start interrogating everybody, and eventually the stories and the lies come out.
I mean, no one overtly blames anyone. It doesn't seem like, Melkor made me do it. It's not like that.
It's not that, because a lot of the elves believe that these are conclusions they've come to on their own. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, Temple has been saying this feels like Othello, and now she says, and now we have the scene in the gym at the end of Mean Girls. Which I've never seen, so I can't say. But you're probably not wrong. So basically, it's a lot of people talking about like what they've been told, and this is the first that Manwë and the Valar are hearing about the Noldor believing that they're prisoners. Mm-hmm. And they're gobsmacked by this.
Yeah, but it eventually comes down to,
Melkor did this. Okay. So they realize that Melkor is the one who has been sowing the seeds of all of this, and immediately Tulkas gets up and he's like,
Where is he?
I'm gonna go lay the smackdown on him. I've been waiting for this day. But Melkor, being as smart as he is, knows the jig is up.
And he's already made his way out.
He's already gone. And he's taken the form of a giant storm cloud.
Mm-hmm. And it's also said that he still has the power to
change form.
To walk unclad.
Mm-hmm. Which is what he's been doing this entire time, which is why people have been listening to him. It's not like he's been walking around dressed as the Dark Lord.
So the Feanor still has to answer for his own deeds, despite the fact that Melkor might have encouraged it.
Melkor probably sowed all these seeds of everything, but at the same time, Feanor still drew his sword on his brother,
and that was still not okay.
And he still has to answer for that.
Fingolfin's first response, right out of his mouth, the only thing he said about it is, "I will release my brother."
Yeah. Well, no. First they lay down his punishment.
Oh, okay.
Feanor's punishment is that he is now banished from Tirion. Mm-hmm. And he has to stay out of Tirion for 12 years to think about what he's done and remember who he is. Mm-hmm. And then in 12 years, you can come and decide and it'll be up to Fingolfin whether or not he will release you from this.
Okay.
And Fingolfin says immediately, I'll release him from this. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Like, he's ready and willing to forgive him for this.
But Feanor still has to suffer punishment.
Feanor still needs to be punished for this. So he leaves Tirion along with his 7 sons.
And his daddy.
And his dad. And this is Finwë actually, he renounces his kingship of the Noldor. This is how much he loves Feanor.
Because he says, as long as my son's not...
As long as my son is not able to be... is not allowed in Tirion, I hold myself unkinged.
And by strange events, the things that Melkor was strewing lies about, now Finwë and Feanor are gone.
Which means now Fingolfin
is High King of the Noldor. Interesting.
So even though basically what Melkor wanted to have happen happened.
Yes.
The only
What he was lying about, what he
What-
was
what
trying
he
to
was-
make people fear.
right. What he
happened.
was trying to make people fear happened. Even though Fingolfin is a really decent person,
Yeah.
he is a good man. He's a good elf.
They went to a place. The others, the rest
They all
of the
leave.
family.
They all leave, and they set themselves up in a stronghold up in the mountains called Formenos.
Formenos.
And it's in here that Feanor, he takes all of his treasures, he takes everything he's ever created, including the Silmarils,
And all the armor.
and all the armor, takes them to Formenos, and locks them in a basement.
It's all mine. Y'all go to hell.
Mm-hmm. And he's there with his 7 sons, and he's there with his father. I don't know if Nerdinel is with him, but I would assume so at this point.
I would think, but they don't. But Tolkien doesn't mention.
He doesn't mention her. Like all he says
there,
about
yeah. I'm sorry.
He says at some point Nerdinel does leave him,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's after something else he does.
Well, it also says at some point Nerdinel stops having any kind of sway over him.
Right.
Like at the beginning, she was able to talk him down
Mm-hmm.
and get him maybe on a different path if she, was wise and
Yeah.
and
If she usually
caring.
she'd be able to, and I think at this point, Feanor is past that.
Yeah.
Like he's not listening to anybody, but she doesn't become estranged from him until, and Tolkien says that it's just his deeds later on, but I have a feeling the deed he's talking about is something else much later.
After the 12 years.
Yeah, because later on, and we're not going to talk about it this week, we'll talk about it next week, Feanor does something
Bad.
utterly and completely unforgivable.
Yes.
But we'll get into that later. Or we'll get into that next week. So this entire time, Tolkas and Orome and everybody, they're on the hunt for Melkor because they believe that he has gone up north to the land bridge between Valinor and Middle Earth called the Helcaraxe.
Mm-hmm. The part that's kind of like Russia and Alaska that kind of come close to each other.
Yeah. It's like what is that called? I can't remember what it's called.
Archipelago.
Whatever.
Yeah, a word like that.
Yeah. Anyway, they believe that he's gone up there and he's crossed over into Middle Earth and is trying to set himself up again in Angband.
Mm-hmm.
And so Tolkas and Orome and everybody concentrate their search up there. But that's not where Melkor went.
He doubled back
And went to an area in the south of Valinor called Avathar.
Where evil things were.
Well, one evil thing.
Ah.
One particular evil thing.
Doesn't he swing by Formenos first?
Yes, he does. And he swings by Formenos because he wants to. And this is the first and only time that he actually speaks to Feanor face to face. He goes to Formenos to try to convince Feanor to leave Valinor with him. And Melkor is very persuasive, and he actually gets to Feanor a little bit. Like Feanor actually stops and considers his offer until Melkor oversteps.
And all he had to do to overstep was say, because Feanor's thinking about it. He's turning around. He's thinking,
on the fence. He's on the fence.
He's right. I mean, even if
because
he wants to turn me to his devices, maybe he's still right. Maybe Melkor is still right about what he's saying. Maybe I should go for my own reasons. And
Melkor, he's very silver-tongued, and he's very good at making good points. Where he's like, you may not trust me, but I'm also a Valar, just like the other Valar who you don't trust either. But I'm willing to help you.
I'm willing to help you, Melkor said to Feanor. I can help you out. And Feanor says, he might be right.
And then Melkor says,
hey, they want the Silmarils. What?
Like, basically, and this is something that Melkor does a lot, is like, he's got a great plan, and he's doing it perfectly, and then he just gets a little too overeager, and he goes one step too far and undoes everything.
Feanor's problem is that he is so jealous of his own Silmarils that the fact that Melkor said, and they want the Silmarils, didn't make Feanor think, oh, they want the Silmarils. Why are you talking about my Silmarils? You go to hell. Sorry. Yeah. And slams the door in his face.
Right. And that's exactly what he does. And I believe he says, like, it's like, be gone from my gate, thou jail crow of Mandos.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, I love that line. And then slams the door in Melkor's face. Literally slams it in his face. And it's at this point, Melkor leaves, and...
Melkor departed in shame. Oh, you know that didn't make him happy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
His heart was black with anger.
Like... And Melkor basically says, oh, you slam a door in my face? Well, then guess what I'm gonna do?
Yeah, I'm gonna go make a friend.
I'm gonna go make a friend. I know somebody that nobody else knows about. And so he sets up a trail that leads Tulkas and Orome up to the Helcaraxa over to Middle-earth, and then he doubles back and goes down south to Avathar, where he meets up with Ungoliant.
There we go. Don't fall.
Now, Ava was talking about... Oh, look at that. You
lost Ungoliant.
You killed Ungoliant. I don't believe it. And before she did anything, too.
No, Ungoliant's gonna be around for a while.
Yeah. So Ava had mentioned earlier that we're meeting one of the scariest creatures in all of fantasy.
Yes.
And I believe she's talking about Ungoliant. Ava, if I am incorrect, please point it out, but I believe this is who you're talking about.
The Eldar knew not whence she came.
There she says, Ava just says, Ungoliant scares me to death.
Yes, and she should.
And she should. Ungoliant is a creature of pure malice, more so than even Melkor.
Well, it's the difference between Freddy Krueger and Jason.
Yeah.
Jason is a force of nature.
Yeah.
And Freddy Krueger is thoughtful in his revenge. Whereas Jason, being a force of nature, will just go like an animal.
He will just absolutely go after you.
Yeah. Melkor is devious. Ungoliant is a force of evil nature and will just doesn't care. Doesn't care.
Now Tolkien makes a point of saying that the origins of Ungoliant aren't very well known. But it's assumed that Ungoliant is actually was a Maiar. That Melkor turned to his side very early on, even before the creation of Arda.
One of those he corrupted to his service.
But then she decided, I'm going to go my own way. And so when Arda was formed, she left Melkor, she left everybody and left everything, and went down to this area in the south and set up her own home there. And basically just lived on her own.
Taking all things to herself to feed her emptiness. And she loved light and hated it, kind of like Gollum loves and hates the ring.
Yeah.
She loves light and consumes it in her hatred of it.
And spews out darkness, or what Tolkien calls an unlight. An
unlight that was actually palpable in a living sense.
Yeah. It's like the way Tolkien describes it is that it wasn't dark. It was not just darkness. It wasn't just lack.
It wasn't just a lack of light. It was its own thing.
It was a crushing unlight. And so she's been living in this area called Avathar. And she's taken on the form of a spider, as we see in that illustration there. She did not take up the form of an adipose.
She makes webs to capture light, and then she consumes the light. But at this point, she's made so many webs that she can't get to the light anymore. Yeah. And she's famished.
And so she lives in this area in Avathar, covered in webs. This is a dark, ugly, scary place. And Melkor goes down there because he is the only person who knows about her. The Valar have no clue about her because this entire time they've been looking to the north to what Melkor has been doing. They've been paying no attention to Ungoliant in the south. So they don't even know of her existence.
Yeah, she's just eating light. But she's not like a black hole. She just eats whatever light comes to her.
Right. And spews out unlight. And so Melkor goes to Avatar and he goes to Ungoliant and basically strikes a deal with her.
He wants his revenge and he says, okay, this is what you're going to get out of it.
He says, I will give you so much light that it will quench you, and I will also give you all the treasures, yea, with both hands.
That's important.
Mm-hmm.
If thou hunger still when it is all done, then I will give thee whatsoever thy lust may demand, yea, with both hands. Everybody say it together. Yea, with both hands.
This is going to come back and literally bite him.
Yes. So they make a plan.
Okay, I like how Northrunner says, for divine archangel types, the Valar are basically pretty clueless.
Well, you know what?
I think that's a bit that's kind of a little harsh, but
only because it's only a little harsh because they're consistently clueless as other pantheon gods are.
Yeah.
And they're more angels than gods, but still they're consistent with the Greek pantheon, the Roman pantheon, the Norse pantheon.
I mean they're
not all knowing.
They're far seeing but not all seeing. Yeah. Is the way I
Iluvatar is all knowing.
Right, and Iluvatar ain't saying jack.
He's keeping it to himself. You guys figure it out.
And also, I think Mandos knows quite a bit, but he's also keeping it to himself. Mm-hmm. And Ulmo knows quite a bit, but he just doesn't care.
Oh yeah. He talks about the things he cares about.
That's not fair. He does care about a lot of things, but he's not as much of a team player.
And he doesn't project well. He knows something bad's going to happen, can't quite figure out what.
Right.
But yeah, he listens to the music pretty well, but he only kind of listens to the music when it pertains to whatever's going on right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So now we have Melkor and Ungoliant working together.
Oh God.
Like this can only end badly, and boy does it.
You thought Sauron was bad. That's nothing compared to
Sauron ain't nothing. Sauron is over in Angband, sitting underground, just waiting for his daddy to come back.
Daddy.
Okay, so Northrunner is saying, yeah, but the Greek and Roman pantheon are make-believe. The Valar are real, aren't they?
Why, yes.
Yes.
We have the book right here.
Yeah, we have the book to prove it.
Yeah.
Of course they're real. Why wouldn't they be real?
So, shall we go on to the festival?
Yes, the festival. So, the 12 years of Feanor's banishment are up. And Manwë has, they annually have a harvest festival.
Now, they've kind of forced this to come because they don't really have a harsh winter. That you have to harvest before. They kind of like force the issue to say, okay, we're going to have our harvest this time of year. And just randomly pick a date, and that's when they have their harvest and their festival. Right,
and they do this, and it's a time of celebration. It's a time of hallowing the grounds and celebrating Iluvatar and all his bounty.
Yeah, who doesn't show up.
Mm-hmm. And so,
the Valar don't need to eat or drink, but they force it a little bit just so they can participate.
It's really just like a feast of solidarity for the elves more than anything.
Yeah, but they eat, they drink.
And so Manwë decides that we're going to have a big festival this year to welcome Feanor back.
Wouldn't that be nice? Feanor should enjoy that.
Yes. No. Now Feanor's not into that, but. And you have to realize that this whole time they also are very, very acutely aware that they have not found Melkor, and he could strike at any minute.
Yeah, they know that, but I mean, what do you do? It's like waiting for the terrorists to strike.
It's like you could live in fear, or you could have a party.
Yeah.
So
they have a party.
And so Manwë decides we're going to have a party, and we're going to welcome Feanor back with open arms. he and Fingolfin are gonna bury the hatchet.
Everything will be wonderful again.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Well,
so Feanor comes back, but nobody else does.
his sons don't come back with him.
Finwë doesn't come back.
His father says, you know what, I'm not king, I'm not going to go back right now, why don't you smooth it out, and then maybe I'll come back and take over again.
Right.
So, also, something that doesn't come back is because Feanor was so jealous of his own Silmarils, he said, you know what, I'm not even going to let them see the Silmarils this time around. I'm not even going to wear them. I'm going to leave them back at home.
I'm going to leave them in Formenos.
Yeah.
And so he comes basically dressed in armor, or basically dressed like.
Not as aggressively.
He's not aggressively dressed, but he's also not festively dressed.
Yeah.
And so the big celebration, of course, is he and Fingolfin meet, and Fingolfin officially releases Feanor. And he actually says something very beautiful to him.
They're friends again.
Yes.
Sort of.
Where the hell am I? Okay, I'm way ahead here.
Here it is.
Okay, he says,
half-brother in blood, full brother in heart.
Full brother in heart shall I be.
Thou shalt lead and I will follow. May no new grief divide us.
Aww.
Oh, nothing will come of that, will it?
Now, you see, here's the thing that you have to remember about the Silmarillion and this type of world, is that when somebody makes an oath, it is taken very seriously.
Magically seriously.
Yeah.
And Feanor didn't even say thank you.
No, he says, I hear you.
Yeah, that's it. I hear you. So be it. Whatever.
Mm-hmm. And
because Feanor's like that.
Are you kidding? Like, for Feanor, that is like, I love you, give me a hug.
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, when Fingolfin promises that no new grief will divide them, that's kind of important.
That's pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
Because new grief is coming.
Even as Feanor and Fingolfin stood before Manwë, there came the mingling of the lights when both trees were shining, and the silent city in Valinor was filled with radiance and silver and gold. That very hour. And in that very hour,
dun dun dun!
Oh no!
Okay, Northerner's leaving. Bye, Northerner.
Bye, Northerner.
Be sure to watch the rest of this on YouTube so you can see how this ends. So, Ungoliant and Melkor return.
Traipsing over the mountains. No one saw them coming.
Well, they saw them coming, but there was really nothing they could do to stop them.
Yeah, well, I mean, by the time they got there, there was like, oh, we're here already.
Yeah. So, a giant cloud comes. Nobody had They say that there is a presence in the clouds. Mm-hmm. Which is Ungoliant. Melkor they know. They have no clue about Ungoliant. And Ungoliant comes in with her Unlight, and Melkor comes along with her, and they go straight up to Azolaha, the great mound that holds the trees of the Valar.
And he takes his black spear
and
smokes both of them.
He stabs the trees of the Valar.
So they bleed.
They bleed, and then he says, Ungoliant, go to it. And she eats up all the sap. She drinks up all of the dew that are in
all the light.
And
she puts a poison of death that was in her, went into the tissues and withered the trees, root, branch, and leaf, and they died.
They have killed the trees of Valinor.
And then she went to the wells that Varda was saving. Mm-hmm. To be able to
make stars.
Yeah, to make stars, and she drank all of that too. So that's the beginning of time.
Mm-hmm.
All of it.
She basically just sucked up all the light that was left in the world, except for the Silmarils.
Silmarils. Oh, the Silmarils are still around.
Mm-hmm.
And the stars in the sky, which she can't reach.
Right. But the main source of light is gone, and this is the greatest tragedy to ever happen in Valinor.
In all of time, I think.
Yeah.
In Tolkien's world.
It's up there.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this is not the first time Melkor has destroyed light. Like, he tore down the lamps of the Valar before. But now he's got Ungoliant with him, and he's He's put a lot of his power into Ungoliant, and Ungoliant has taken in all of this light, and she has grown huge and powerful to the point where Tolkien actually says Melkor was afraid of her.
Yeah!
So now Ungoliant is an unstoppable force of unlight and darkness.
Swelled to a shape so vast and hideous that Melkor was afraid.
Mm-hmm. And so at this point, they gather up everything and they head off and leave the elves to wail and moan. Even the Valar are crying over this.
But it should be noted that even though this was a great feast and everything, the Teleri kind of keep to themselves. They didn't really come.
Right.
Yeah,
this was mostly for the Noldor.
Yeah, the Teleri, they're still out by the shores, but because the light is gone, they could also hear the wailing of the Teleri from far away because they're missing light. They don't know what's going on.
Right. So now, and that's essentially where this chapter ends, but we're going to go a little bit further.
And just by the way, because they live on the shores, they were also taught shipbuilding.
Right.
Because that's important.
Yes. That'll come in later, but not this week. But we are going to go a little bit further into the next chapter, or I won't say it's part of the next chapter because a lot of when it's revealed in the next chapter, it's all after the fact.
Yeah, it's revealed after the fact, but it's already happened.
Right. So.
But as they're chasing Melkor off the land, it's still this great big huge unlight, and Tulkas was as one caught in a black net at night, and he stood powerless and beat the air in vain because he couldn't get to Melkor in the midst of this darkness.
Right. This is the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Yeah, Tulkas tried to go after him but couldn't manage it.
Right. And so so they have everything except the one thing that Melkor wants the most, the Silmarils.
So before Melkor got to...
So before Melkor actually leaves Valinor, he heads up to Formenos to get Feanor's treasure, and I mean all of it, including the Silmarils, everything. And it's there that Finwë stands up against him. And they have a big fight, and this is the tragic part. Melkor kills Finwë. Finwë is dead, and Feanor's 7 sons are tied up by the unlight, by Ungoliant's tendrils, and Melkor breaks through into Formenos, goes into the basement, and takes every last bit of treasure.
All the jewels.
He takes all the jewels, and he takes the Silmarils.
And he has the Silmarils in one hand, and has kind of everything else in the other.
And remember what he said, yea with both hands.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get to that yet.
You don't want to get to that?
Don't want to get to that yet.
Okay.
So where this ends is Valinor is cast in darkness, Finwë has been killed, Melkor and Ungoliant are heading up to the Hel Caraxa to cross over to Middle Earth, and they have stolen the Silmarils.
Oh, one other thing. I pulled out his copy of Two Towers, Josh's copy of Two Towers.
Oh, yes.
Because there's, I don't know if you haven't read the Silmaril, maybe you just read over this line and didn't pay attention to it. But
honestly, I didn't even remember this line, but then when you read it to me, I'm like, oh, wow.
I always love this line.
That's amazing.
There's a paragraph in Two Towers in Shelob's Lair where Shelob, where it describes Shelob. And it begins by saying, there age long she had dwelt, an evil thing in spider form, even such as once of old had lived in the land of elves in the west that is now under the sea. Okay. Such as Beren fought in the mountains of terror in Doriath, and so came to Luthien upon the green sward. But then at the end of that paragraph, it says, but none could rival her, Shelob the Great, last child of Ungoliant, to trouble the unhappy world. Ah!
And it should also be mentioned that in the Hobbit movies, Radagast makes a reference to Ungoliant as well.
When the spiders come attack his home.
When the spiders attack his home, and he says, and he says to himself, "Some spawn of Ungoliant."
So cool. Ungoliant's pretty bad.
Ungoliant is one terrifying creature.
Yeah.
And, like, so terrifying, even the Lord of Darkness is scared of her.
And it only gets worse.
And so, basically, at this point, Melkor has won. He's got his revenge.
More or less.
More or less.
He's got to deal with what Ungoliant wants from him.
Yeah, and that's what we'll be talking about next week in a bigger chapter called The Flight of the Noldor. And that...
This next chapter is as big as the last 3 chapters together.
Yes.
So you know how Josh was saying that he wanted to do like 2 chapters a week? Well, we've done 3 chapters today, and we'll do 1 chapter next time, I think?
Yeah.
Okay.
1 chapter next week, because that's mostly about it's the Flight of the Noldor, which is a very big chunk of what happens next. And then after that, we have Of the Sindar, which is everything that's been going on with Thingol in Middle-earth this entire time. So we're actually going to take a step back and look at what's been going on in another part of the world this whole time.
Yeah, I was going to say something, now it's gone. Never mind.
Okay. That's been happening to me all day long. So Ava says also, yeah, Radagast mentioned Ungoliant.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where we are now, and this is the beginning of the War of the Jewels.
I know what I was going to say. All those O's that we were quoting and saying, oh, look out, what's going to happen because someone said this, those all unfold, and how terrible even the most positive of odes will be in the next chapter. And I will be here for that.
Yes. And Ava's saying, yay, Sindar. And I should mention, Ava has been working on this portrait of Melian, which looks freaking amazing, and she's been posting it on her Instagram. You should definitely check it out. It looks unbelievable. And and what I showed you, that's not even the full thing. Like, she's been doing a background, and down at the bottom is the gates to Menegroth, the fortress. Nice. It looks incredible. So I'm hoping that in 2 weeks, when we do the chapter on the Sindar, I'll be able to show that to all of you.
Very nice. Ava, get going. Fingolfin. They're friends now.
They're friends.
Yeah.
But, you know, Feanor still isn't done doing bad things to Fingolfin.
He's not.
Yeah, and yeah, there's something that Feanor will do, which we'll talk about next week, that just makes me go like,
oh, you're that kind of guy.
It's like, oh, you are a real jerk.
Yeah.
And like, even Fingolfin, who is like still very forgiving, like even he, when he finally like is able to confront Feanor about it, he's still just like, what the hell, man? I thought we were good.
Yeah, that's kind of his reaction, because he's still a good guy and he doesn't want to curse Feanor because
but he's still like,
he owes to be at his side.
But he's still like, dude, I thought we were good.
Why would you do that?
But now we're just being vague because we're going to talk about that next week.
Silly.
Yes. So next week is going to be the Flight of the Noldor. This week has been Feanor, the Silmarils, Melkor, Ungoliant, all sorts of big, bad, awful things. But this is such a great story. Like, this part of the story I absolutely love, and I would, if this ever were to get adapted, I think that this would be a great first season.
Yeah, this is my favorite part.
Like, just because there's so much intrigue, there's so much treachery, and there's like the
power of
all the parts with Melkor, like just convincing the Noldor of all these different lies, and like just seeing how silver-tongued he is. Like, it always makes me think of like somebody like Littlefinger or Varys from Game of Thrones.
But it's like, the difference is the audience could still look at it and say, oh, he's lying.
Yeah.
And whereas the Noldor had no clue. They believed it all.
Which is always a very tough thing to depict, because the one thing you really don't want in a show is for the audience to know more than the main characters.
Well, you know a little bit more, but
right.
I mean, to know that the bad guy is bad is one thing, but for you to lose faith in the good guy because he's an idiot, that's something else.
Yeah, and that's one of the hard things, and that's one of the things that I like. He was saying, I didn't even notice the show is over an hour already. Guess what? Neither did we.
Yeah. As an aside, though, back in the 60s, I don't know if you're familiar with the TV show Wild Wild West, which was a phenomenal TV show.
Oh, yeah.
The second banana on that show was essentially a buddy show, but there was one main lead. His buddy was the costume guy, was the I can hide my face and be any man in the crowd guy.
Right.
But did you know that the network demanded that no matter what makeup he's wearing, he always needed to be recognizable to the audience? That's why his makeup looked like crap.
Interesting.
Because the network didn't want the audience to be scared. So yeah,
networks are weird.
We don't believe in that anymore. We want to be convinced like the rest of the good guys are convinced and say, I never would have suspected he would have turned on us. Maybe we might know a little bit more.
Well, you see that's why I think like it's good to make Feanor the audience conduit, because he's somebody who never trusts Melkor.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you're telling the story primarily from Feanor's perspective, which I believe you should, you can sort of like, then you're sort of sympathizing with Feanor as somebody who knows. He knows that Melkor is full of crap.
And we know as an audience.
Meanwhile, Feanor himself is being convinced more insidiously by a worm tongue type of character.
Or a variety of people that...
Or various worm tongues.
But it's more insidious in the sense that he could have a trusted friend come to him and say, you know what I heard? Mm-hmm. Because that trusted friend trusted someone else's word.
Right.
And it all came on down the line.
Because, that's the other thing with Wormtongue. You know he's a jerk.
Yeah, like, look at him. It's Brad Dourif, for crying out loud.
From the second he's on screen, you know he's not a good guy. Hell, his
name is Wormtongue.
In the books, you know he's not a good guy. His name's Wormtongue, for God's sake.
And he's played by Brad Dourif.
Of course
he's a bad guy.
The creepiest working actor in Hollywood.
I thought that was one of the most perfectly cast roles when I heard that.
It really was.
I was so thrilled.
Of all the different casting announcements that were originally made for Lord of the Rings, Brad Dourif as Wormtongue, I was like, perfect. So that is the best person to play that role.
Yes.
And of course,
Christopher
Lee as Sarumann.
Ian McKellen ended up being phenomenal.
I
knew less about that.
Well, I knew Ian McKellen from Apt Pupil and from X-Men. Mm-hmm. So I was familiar with Ian McKellen when he first when he was first announced, and so I was like, I can see it. Yeah,
but we didn't know for sure.
Didn't know for
sure.
We
knew for sure about Christopher Lee. We knew for sure about Brad Dourif.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think, who else did I know for sure?
Now, I had a problem with Elrond. Because I always thought, despite the fact that he looks older now, I always thought Elrond should have always been played by David Bowie. David Bowie has two different color eyes.
That's a pretty good choice.
And I heard recently that he actually petitioned for that.
Oh yeah. He was one of the guys who they were originally going to cast in the ill-fated movie from the 60s.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, he would have been at the right age back then. Mm-hmm. But Elrond's a half elven and he's got two different color eyes. How perfect is that? Yeah. Come on.
Well, I've always felt David Bowie at any age should play an elf somewhere.
Right?
Like, if he's still alive when and if a Silmarillion series gets made, he's got to be somebody.
Yeah.
He's got, like, maybe Thingol. I don't know. Somebody.
He's going to be up there, though. I mean, despite the commercials and what they can do with his face and everything, he doesn't quite look like that anymore. Yeah. In my imagination, it works. It doesn't work in real life.
No, you're probably right. But anyway, but yeah, like I've been thinking about casting for the Silmarillion a little bit. Like, even though Cate Blanchett is ageless and perfect and gorgeous in every way, and I love her and never die. But
yeah.
At the same time, I still think, should she come back to play Galadriel again?
As she's thousands of years younger there.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking like, okay, I understand that elves are ageless, but I still feel like even even this Galadriel should look younger.
Yeah.
And so I've been like wondering, like, well then, let's say Christopher Tolkien changes his mind,
or he dies and his children change their mind.
That's probably
more likely, or his grandchildren,
or his grandchildren, or let's just say somebody in the Tolkien estate who has the ability changes their mind and sells the rights to the Silmarillion, and the studio immediately green lights it because they would. Who would you cast as Galadriel? Because Galadriel is another one of those characters who I feel is a good audience surrogate, just because she's somebody everybody is familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Temple is saying Kaya Scodolero would make an interesting Luthien. She looks a lot like Liv Tyler and has that kind of mysterious elfin look. I'm not familiar with who that is.
Not at all.
Not at all. I'm gonna have to look her up. So anyway, and Temple saying I totally spelled her last name wrong. Okay, I still don't know who that is. But anyway, so my thought was, and this is only because I was watching Game of Thrones last week,
mm-hmm.
and there was a shot of it was probably like the first shot of the episode of Daenerys,
mm-hmm.
where she's standing on a balcony. And somebody calls out to her, and she just turns around. She's got the city behind her,
mm-hmm.
wearing this beautiful flowing gown, and she's got this nice bright smile on her
mm-hmm.
face. And I was like, "Oh my God, that is young Galadriel!"
Wow. Nice.
So Emilia Clarke, I think she would be the one
for young Galadriel.
And
now we need to cast Luthien.
Well, that person who Temple just mentioned, I'm gonna have to look her up.
And Feanor. Who would be Feanor? He's got to be like 18 years old now.
Yeah, it's got to be somebody young, somebody that just like really brash.
Yeah. Or gives that impression.
Or yeah. You see,
But supposedly actors can act. And
What?
I've heard the story.
No, that's a lie.
Chris Evans surprised me so much he was that smart alecky wisecracking dude for several films in a row, and then
especially
Captain
Fantastic
America?
Four.
Yeah, and then Captain America. I saw his casting for that. I said, "No, Captain America."
Oh no, I was the same way.
Aleck.
I was like, Chris Evans is going to be Captain America, and then I saw it. I was like, oh my God.
Yes, he can act.
Like
he can act.
He can act. Like he was like 100% like Americana, and I was like, wow, you pulled that off better than I ever thought you would.
I was so relieved.
Yeah.
I was also relieved because going back to what we were talking about, when I heard that Peter Jackson was directing Lord of the Rings, because all I knew him from was Dead Alive.
Now, okay, I knew Peter Jackson from a few other things. I had seen my first exposure to Peter Jackson was The Frighteners.
Mm-hmm.
And I love The Frighteners. It's not exactly what you would see as like, okay, The Frighteners, and then we go to Lord of the Rings.
But now we see Lord of the Rings, we can see what pieces of The Frighteners he used for the Nine.
But what really got me was I had also recently seen Heavenly Creatures, and there are some beautiful dream sequences in that of her among this kingdom of like clay people.
Right.
And it was just so imaginative and so visually striking. I was like, you know what? If he's willing to bring that to bear, I could totally see Lord of the Rings done like this.
But imagine if you'd only ever seen Dead Alive.
That would be something.
And then, this guy's going to do Lord of the Rings. No.
Well, okay, that was the best thing I ever saw was at a video store. This is back when video stores still existed. And they released a special edition of Bad Taste, which was it was actually Peter Jackson's very first movie. This predates Dead Alive, and the main poster image for Bad Taste is this big, ugly, gross-looking alien creature giving the finger to the camera, and so the cover for this special edition is that image, this big, gross, ugly alien flipping you off, and then up in the corner it says, "From the Academy Award-winning director of The Lord of the Rings." And I just thought that was absolutely brilliant. So now we're just like talking about nonsense at this point.
Yes.
But yeah, thinking about casting the Silmarillion, doing the Dreamcast. We could talk about that more at another time.
Yeah.
But we'll bring this to a close now since we're coming up on almost an hour and a half.
Mhm.
So I want to thank everybody who showed up, and thank you, Suzanne,
You're
as
welcome.
always, for joining us and bringing all the toys and stuffed animals as wonderful visual aids for this. So we are now officially into the War of the Jewels, and this is an image that we will talk about next week. So next week we will be talking about the Flight of the Noldor, which it's going to be hard to sympathize with Feanor after this.
Such a ruddy pain in the neck.
So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching. I will see you all next week, and never stop reading.
Stop reading.